All right, as the 2024 presidential elections approaches, many voters continue to express deep concerns over election integrity and whether or not they can trust the election process as a whole. We all certainly know that cheating can be accomplished. And in fact, recent polls, some that we've talked about even recently on this program, have verified those suspicions. Last couple of years, several states, including my own state of Georgia and the state of Texas and many others, have passed laws to uphold the integrity of elections. Well, Texas is one of those states leading the way, and joining me to discuss this is State Senator Bryan Hughes. He represents the 1st Senate District of Texas. Senator Hughes, welcome to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Congressman, thank you for having me on. Glad to be with you.
Well, listen, hats off to you and the state of Texas and other states. My home state of Georgia has been heavily involved in trying to protect elections, and I would say probably those two states, Georgia and Texas, are probably leading the way. Many people are looking at these and saying these are model pieces of legislation. So you have Senate Bill 1 there in Texas. Tell us about this. Why is it so important for ensuring election integrity, and what does Senate Bill 1 do?
Congressman, thank you. You're so right. You said it well. You've seen the polling. People on the left and the right are not sure if they can trust the elections. And we have to have elections where people can know the results and accept the results and move forward if our system is going to work. So Senate Bill 1, given that number from our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, who presides over the Texas Senate, this is a priority for him and really ought to be for everybody. Not really a partisan issue, but making sure those elections are working like they should. So our mantra is easy to vote, hard to cheat. Both of those are obviously important. Easy to vote and hard to cheat. We found that those mail ballots can be the greatest source, certainly the greatest potential for fraud. I know that was the case in Georgia and many states. And so we've cracked down on these ballot harvesters, these people who are paid by political campaigns, and they go to the homes of vulnerable voters, mislead them, get their signatures, sometimes forge their signatures, and being paid by a campaign under the guise of helping the voters. And in fact, they're trying to impose their will, trying to steal their vote. So we've cracked down on that, criminal and civil liability for vote harvesting. If you're being paid by a campaign, you need to stay away from the voter and their ballot. You can campaign, you can encourage them to vote, but when that mail ballot's present, you cannot be anywhere near that in Texas, or you're committing a crime. And what about when those ballots come in? Now in Texas, we have 24-hour live stream of whenever those ballots are being counted, wherever they are. Also, before that process, when they're checking the signature verification. I know in Georgia that was an issue in 2020, and so many states where these signature verification processes, also in some places in Texas, were being shortcutted. We want to make sure that every vote counts, every legitimate vote cast by that voter. We also implemented voter ID for those mail ballots. Now, when you request your mail ballot, you give us your voter registration number or your driver license number or your social security number. And so that way, when the ballot comes in, we can verify that to make sure it was you, the voter, who requested that ballot, and make sure you, the voter, are the one who cast that ballot. Simple common sense reforms like that. We also, for in-person voting, expanded the hours, made it easier for folks to vote, give them more opportunities. And one more thing we found was happening on in-person voting on election day on the polling place. We had these vote harvesters being paid by campaigns, coming up alongside vulnerable voters, maybe first-time voters, maybe voters with limited English proficiency, or voters who weren't sure what was happening. They come alongside these voters and say, oh, let me help you. And they walk into the polling place with that voter, but then it's that a voter assistant who's doing the voting and not the voter. We're cracking down on that. If folks need help, they're going to get help, but we cannot have paid political operatives in the voting booth influencing voters. That's wrong, that's cheating, and we're not letting that happen in Texas.
Couldn't agree with you anymore. And these mail-in ballots, I'm sure you saw the poll this past week of 1 in 5 of those who voted by mail admitted to fraudulent activity. And you would feel confident if you were being polled. Did you cheat? Did you commit fraud? Probably some people say, oh, no, no, not me, not me. So probably the number is more than that. We've only got a little over a minute left, Senator. But for our viewers and listeners right now in other states, how do you think they can kind of push their state lawmakers to enact some similar laws real quickly?
Senator, I would say this, those mail ballots, they're an important tool. Folks who are disabled, who are going to be out of the county, going to be out of town, it's important. But as you know, states are pushing for universal mail ballots for everyone. That is a recipe for fraud. That's a recipe for elections that we cannot trust. So we want to make the in-person voting process as smooth and easy and secure as we can. And for those folks who need to vote by mail, that's important, make sure we have those checks in place. We're making sure it's the voter requesting the ballot, the voter casting the ballot, make sure we're matching up those signatures and keep those paid political operatives out of the process. Our elections are not for sale. We want to keep it that way.
We all want to keep it that way. State Senator Bryan Hughes from Texas, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch, and thank you for leading the charge in Texas and hopefully rippling effect far beyond to keep elections secure. God bless you. Merry Christmas.